Hello, Lovelace, and welcome to our first English lesson of the new week. Today, we're going to see if you can understand the features of the model text. So the types of English techniques, the types of writing, the word choices, or the use of grammar, all those sorts of things that feature in the model text. And remember, our text this week has been Beowulf and Grendel. So let's remind ourselves of the story. Hear and listen well, my weary warriors, and I will tell you a tale that has been told for thousands of years and more. In ages past, Denmark was a wild place. Gruesome monsters roamed the misty moors. The king of the Danes, the warrior King Hrothgar, defeated many a foe, collecting riches and followers alike. He was known as a generous and fair king. He ordered work on a great mead hall to house all his bannermen. Soon there it stood, Heorot, made of the finest wood, decorated with silver and gold. Each night, the king invited his bravest warriors to a lavish feast of roasted meat, jugs of frothing ale, and music for dancing feet. And inside, the men ate and drank until they fell asleep. But outside, something evil was rising. Okay, let's pause there and just look at some of the techniques that we've used. In that opening paragraph, hear and listen well, my weary warriors. I will tell you a tale that has been told for thousands of years and more. We're looking at the tone there, the way it's been said, the way the story has been introduced. In this case, it's like you're telling the story to your friends. And that's what it was like back then. These were soldiers in arms. These were friends who would give their lives for each other. And around the campfire, they were just that. They were friends telling each other stories. So this opening paragraph, hear and listen well, my weary warriors. I will tell you a tale. This is a storyteller. So the tone there is really quite friendly. He's there just to tell them a story. Now, if we move down to the third paragraph, we've got what we call the rule of three. Now, the rule of three can be used in all sorts of areas of life. Sometimes it's used in design, interior design, all sorts of things, but it's also used regularly in English, and we'll see it again later in the story. But here, we've used it for describing a scene. We've used three separate things to describe the feast. So each night, the king invited his bravest warriors to a lavish feast of roasted meat, jugs of frothing ale, and music for dancing feet. Three things have been put within that list. Okay? And it's just a nice way to describe things, an effective way of describing things. If you can come up with three things, that short list, it can be really, really effective in our writing. We've got some brackets here as well. Now the brackets separate, in this case, the inside from the outside. But it's giving us some extra information. Okay. Inside, the men ate and drank until they fell asleep. But outside, something evil was rising. So it separates it off, but it gives us that extra bit of information, extra drama in the story. We could stop. The men ate and drank until they fell asleep. It would still be correct, but that extra information makes it far more dramatic and tense for the reader. And then we've got that jump from outside to inside. Our reader is now aware of what the situation is throughout the entire scene, not just inside the mead hall, not just inside Heorot, but also outside. Okay, so the author has jumped from inside to outside to paint a much more complete picture for our readers. Across the moor, a foul monster crawled from its swamp lair. The almost formless creature of nightmares slunk from its lair, howling in rage as its slumber had been disturbed by the revel makers. Silently, the god-cursed brute crept into Heorot, waiting till the warrior king had left his hall. In the dead of night, Grendel attacked like a sudden storm, leaving the hall in disarray. No bodies remained, only the life essence of their passing. Grendel ruled the night, and the great Heorot stood empty for 12 winters. News of this dreadful tragedy spread far and wide to all the princes of different lands. But only one of them, the greatest and bravest, Beowulf, decided this night terror must be stopped. And aboard a seaworthy ship, he sailed the whale road to Denmark with 14 hand-picked warriors. When Beowulf arrived, sudden hope warmed the old king's heart. Together, they feasted until night fell. Okay, what can we spot in this section of the text? Well, first of all, we've started with a prepositional phrase, a phrase that tells us where our story is currently set. So in this case, it's across the moor. But it could equally be in the mead hall, under the stairs, around the corner. A prepositional phrase simply describes the where. So in this case, across the moor. A hint of the unknown. This allows the readers to, their own imagination to paint a picture. If we look in the actual text, there's very little information about what Grendel looks like. The almost formless creature of nightmares. The reader has, the writer, is allowing the reader to make up their own mind. What would a creature of nightmares be for them? And if you look at the various retellings of the story of Beowulf, Grendel appears in lots and lots and lots of different forms because the description is vague. The reader is allowed to use their own imagination. So it can be a very, very, very effective writing tool, one to try out sometimes. An adverbial starter, in this case, to show the passage of time. In the dead of night. Okay. So we've moved the story on a little bit. It starts in the evening with the party, with the feast for all the warriors. And now, in the dead of night, we've jumped ahead a little bit. We are now in the early hours of the morning when everyone's asleep. And Grendel feels that she can attack, or he can attack, without fear of an army waiting for him. Okay, so in the dead of night, an adverbial starter, and in this case, to move the story on. Hyphens, little bit of punctuation, just that little line, and it just allows you to add an extra little bit of detail into a sentence. So in this case, but only one of them, the greatest and bravest, Beowulf, decided this night terror must be stopped. We could leave out the word Beowulf and it would still make sense, but it is helpful for the reader. So, but only one of them, the greatest and bravest, decided that this night terror must stop. Still makes sense, but we need that extra little bit of information. So the hyphens just separate it off, but allow us to slot it into the sentence. As darkness swallowed light, the swamp bubbled and Grendel rose. Grisly, grim, and gruesome. No one word could describe this brute. Beowulf crouched in the shadows, his steely eyes fixed on the murdering monster. Without a weapon, Beowulf pounced, grasping the monster's arm. Grendel writhed and thrashed, but Beowulf would not let go. Grendel swiped and slashed, but Beowulf would not let go. The hall shuddered, benches shattered, but still Beowulf refused to let go. He tugged the monster's arm, and tore it from its body. Roaring in pain, the monster smashed through the walls and charged into the night, staggering across the moor. Beowulf stood, holding the monster's arm. He knew there was no way the beast would survive such a mortal wound. Its life ebbing away drop by drop. Grendel was defeated. Okay. Now in this one, we start with a metaphor, a way to describe something. Okay. As darkness swallowed light. So it's talking about the change from darkness to light. So the darkness is swallowing the light. So we're getting into the evening now. But obviously darkness doesn't actually swallow light. It's just we're playing with the words. We're creating a metaphor to help our reader visualize what's going on. So the darkness swallows the light. The light is disappearing into the evening. Short sentences. These can be used for impact. So here we've just got a 3-word sentence. The hall shuddered. Benches shattered. 2-word sentence. It's just for impact. It's allowing the reader to realize that these events are sudden, are violent, are impactful. We're not dragging it out as if these things are happening slowly and gradually. These are happening suddenly, so there is an impact to them. The hall shuddered. Benches shattered. It emphasizes the drama of the situation. Repetition. We're back to this rule of 3 again. In this case, it's Beowulf not letting go. It highlights the importance of this action. So the first one, Grendel writhed and thrashed, but Beowulf would not let go. Grendel swiped and slashed, but Beowulf would not let go. The hall shuddered, benches shattered, but still Beowulf refused to let go. 3 times. 3 times he refused to let go. And by doing that, by using that rule of 3, we have reinforced the importance of that action to the reader. Not letting go is the reason Beowulf was able to succeed and win this battle. Semicolon. Now, this is a piece of punctuation where you've got the dot in the air and the comma on the line. And we use this where we've got 2 linked clauses that we're going to bring together. They're not a complete sentence, so a comma wouldn't be sufficient. But they are linked, so maybe it's not appropriate to create 2 separate sentences. In this case, Beowulf stood holding the monster's arm. He knew there was no way the beast would survive such a mortal wound. So the sentences are clearly, or the clauses, I should say, are clearly linked. But they need a piece of punctuation there just to separate them to allow the reader to understand. If you took that out and read straight through, it might be a little bit more confusing for your reader. Okay, so the semicolon there is just separating those 2 linked clauses. By the next morning, the news of the great fight at Heorot had spread throughout the land, so that everyone should know that the tyrant was truly dead and their grief finally at an end. The hero hung high in the gables of Heorot, where all could see that whole torn off limb, gruesome witness to the monster's violent end. Here we've got some additional information, and we've stuck them between 2 commas. Okay, so the 2 commas separate that whole torn off limb. Again, we could leave it out, it would still make sense. But we've added that extra information just to assist in the vision for the reader. Let's go back to the beginning of that sentence. So that everyone should know that the tyrant was truly dead and their grief finally at an end. The hero hung high in the gables of Heorot, where all could see that whole torn off limb. gruesome witness to the monster's violent end. But without that section, it would still make sense. We're just giving that extra information. Okay, so there's a full list. There's your Beowulf toolkit. All your grammatical and punctuational support that has been used throughout that piece of writing. Okay, some of them you might be familiar with. Some of them are a little bit more alien, and we need a little bit of practice over the weeks and months ahead. But hopefully in today's task, you'll get the opportunity to maybe show off using some, if not all, of those. It's a short piece of writing today, so you won't be able to use them all, however clever you are, but I'm sure you're going to be able to get a few of these in there, and it'd be great to see some of this Beowulf toolkit being used. So here's your task, a short write task today, a 5-sentence story. That's it, 5 sentences. But your story must include a monster, a map, and a toy sword. 3 objects that don't always go together: a monster, a map, and a toy sword. And your 5-sentence starters are once upon a time, one day, unfortunately, luckily, and finally. Okay, so each of your 5 sentences need to start with those 5-sentence openers. See if you can make your story flow. See if you can start with your introduction and scene setting. Create your problem. Move into your resolution. And then wrap it up. Okay. Hope that makes sense. This is the end of the lesson. Take care of yourself, and I will see you soon.